It's your boy, Coach Defense here. Thanking you for supporting the channel. Become a lockdown defender by hitting that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And if you're enjoying your time, hit that like button. Help us grow in the community. Now, check out our latest video. Leave a comment. And as always, you got to step up to lock it down. The Daniel Jones experiment has come to an end. After being draft number 6 overall and having lofty expectations of being the successor to Eli Manning's throne, who brought them 2 Super Bowls, Daniel Jones, after being benched for Tommy DeVito, asked to be released from his $160 million deal to become a free agent. The Giants were tagged with benching him because they wanted to ward off an injury clause in his contract that would make them more liable for more guarantee money if he got hurt. So they gave Daniel the signal to say to the Giants he preferred to move on. So he asked to be released, and now he has clear waivers, so he's a free agent. He hadn't been picked up as of this pod. So I personally have been critical on the mistakes the Giants have been making in the front office for quite some years now. Mm-hmm. But from your perspective, Coach Mike Dub, tell me exactly what is your perspective on this latest development, and in your opinion, who failed who?
I think it ultimately starts at the top. It ultimately starts at the top. I think that well, first and foremost, Daniel Jones has never been the head coach's guy. I think that was evident from the beginning. And I'm a firm believer that, like Bill Parcells said, if you want him to cook, let him buy the groceries. If you want your coach to coach, let him coach who he wants to coach. You know what I mean? If you can't give a head coach somebody and give him something that he's been vocal about wanting to replace and expect that team to fall in and expect that team to just have cohesiveness, something's not going to click. Whether it be the play calling, whether it be the communication, something's not going to click with that team as long as there's a rift. So it starts from the top. If you're going to bring in a guy, you better bring in a guy that's on the same page as you. And I don't think that they're ever on the same page as far as the quarterback situation goes. Dayball has been, I think pretty in his actions, it's been pretty evident that he's been looking for a replacement. He didn't believe that Daniel Jones was the guy for what he wanted to do. Right. More power to him. He's the coach. He has a certain mindset, a certain scheme, a certain player that he wants to run with. You have to respect that. As an owner, as management, if you have to know that when you start going through the process, when you're going through the process of hiring coaches, you should be figuring out whose, mindset is going to align with mine if I'm not going to get out the way. If you're not going to get out the way and you're glued to Danny, then you got to find a coach who's going to be able to be glued to Danny. Right. So, it starts with ownership, and management. If you're going to bring in somebody that's on the same page as you, because if not, you get this debacle of what you have now. And because management is not on the same page as the coaches, there's a distrust from the players. Now the players don't think anybody knows what they're doing. And when players don't buy into it, then you get the type of effort that you get. You get guys that don't want to play for the franchise. You get guys that don't want to go out and, they don't want to be there. You know what I mean? And you look at your top rookie, and he's looking around like, what's going on? How am I getting no targets in the first half? How does that happen? You know what I mean? Right. And in a 30-7 blowout, now we start getting tackled. And then, you look at, reasons of them not wanting to pay people and, all kinds of things. You saw the Hard Knocks episode and how they view, it's just been a disaster after disaster. I think the one thing that saved them is that there's another team in the city that's just as bad, if not worse. So,
right.
Luckily you split the attention, half and half. But
right.
I mean, it's just been bad. To answer your question, who failed who? It starts at the top. Management failed the coaching staff, and I really feel for the coaching staff because I feel like they're put in a no-win situation. You know what I mean? They're giving you somebody who you're not glued to. You don't really, you got to make it work with them. And then they're telling you, all right, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then the type of message, the last thing I'm going to say is management is also, failing the players because the message that you're sending is that you don't want to win. Because even though Daniel Jones is not, okay, so he's not the guy. I think it's clear he's the best quarterback on the roster. That's number one.
Yeah.
When you make the decision that you don't want to go with him, you're saying that, you're no longer focused on winning, you're thinking about the future. And then the second thing is now you're not even moving on to Drew Lock. You're moving on to a third string.
Right.
So now the message that you're sending to guys is that you're trying to tank. That's what it says to me, is that you don't want to put the best guys on the field. You're not concerned about winning. You're not concerned about, maximizing and turn. And we're talking about there's still a lot of time left in the season.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can still figure out what's going to happen. So now you're starting to play with guys' money. You start to play with things like that. That makes players not want to play for the franchise. That makes, that just kills the whole culture. So ultimately, I put it on management. I don't think Dayball. I mean, I don't know. I can't call it, but it doesn't look like Dayball is going to be there very soon, just because they're going to have to clean house in order to regain the franchise, in order to get back on track. They got to clean house and start all over again. But ultimately, it starts from the top down.
Yeah, and I think we saw from a Hard Knocks perspective that there was no cohesiveness from the owner to the GM to the coach. Like, it's like the owner and the coach thought one thing and the GM thought another. Yeah. So when and everybody's not in lockstep and everybody's not on the same page, that's when you have dysfunction, if nothing else. And it just saddens me, it pains me to see people with this $1 billion level organization make such wild decisions. It's baffling to me. Like, you think that the more money you spend, the smarter you should be, but that's clearly not the case. People don't have the acumen for football and what it takes to build a winner, right? That's always been frustrating for me. But I do agree that the management is not in tandem with from how it trickles down. You got the owner thinking one thing. I want to keep Saquon. It would be a travesty, like you said in the Hard Knocks. It'd be a travesty if he went to a rival, which he ended up doing. And how's that working out for you? And the GM, to me, it seemed like he's the only one that was holding near and dear to Danny and didn't want to be wrong about this idea that he isn't the guy, especially after paying him $160 million. You know, so I think that when it comes down to that's funny. Cowboys ownership comes to mind. Yeah. It's a lot of it's 2 out of 4 organizations in that division is dysfunctional. That's for sure. Yeah. That's for sure. But I'm gonna talk about Daniel Jones for a minute, and I'll get back to the management. But drafting Daniel Jones for me, from top to bottom, was a mistake.
I agree.
I think that from the beginning, that was an issue. And I think that the problem was the Giants kept doubling down on it year after year for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is a classic case of trying to be right instead of getting it right.
Yeah.
You could clearly see after year 2 to 3 that Daniel Jones wasn't tracking well to be a franchise quarterback. Mm-hmm. You can see that. They brought in coach after coach to work with him, position and head coach, and nothing changed. He to me doesn't feel like he sees the game properly. He doesn't process the game well in like most NFL quarterbacks do. He just doesn't seem like he has that comfortability with anything. And we just the simple basic things. I mean, I feel like Dayball tried to dumb it down for him in a large space, and he just wasn't tracking for some reason. It just wasn't. So I think that was an issue. And maybe he just doesn't trust what he sees, but he just don't exude. He don't exude the traits to me that warrant the contract that he got. Not only that, but you opted to give him the money and wanted to penny pinch Saquon. Make that make sense. Clearly he was your best player, and you wanted to penny pinch Saquon, and but you wanted to pay Danny. Clearly that sounds like the GM that has GM written it over to me. Joe written it all over to me. So upper management, after all this mess and media attention, finally seen the light when the coach, who got Josh Allen on track, couldn't make Jones work. You finally understand what the problem was.
Yeah.
So now you're here again resetting the franchise, and you got Saquon across the way breaking records with your rival, and putting them back on the map. We just talk about them being a contender, so that's the issue. For me, I believe Dayball is a good coach, but I think he needs a competent quarterback to run his offense. I think that if I had it to bet on it, I would say that you could honestly truly be a quarterback and one more receiver away, and maybe a better back away from being a solid team and a solid organization. Because I think the defense is solid. They may be a corner away, but that's a good problem to have when you got a solid front seven. You just need a cornerback and maybe a safety. So I think that they got a lot of good pieces there. They just got the wrong I guess you can say head of the class in the quarterback.
Yeah.
But it just, like I said, it just sickens me to see such horrible decisions being made about with $1 billion franchises. And I think that if I could have it a way where you can fire the GM and keep the coach, that's what I would do. But it typically don't run that way. Typically the GM goes, the coach goes too. But it's clearly to me that the GM is over his skis. I don't think that he is built for this particular level of I guess you can say quote unquote management level. He's not built for that. He's more of a positional guy. He's not a GM.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. But because I'm not sure we even got him from. But he's definitely not ready for the moment. That's for me. He's definitely not ready for the moment. So I do agree with you. I think management failed Danny, but I do think that they failed themselves by drafting him in the first place because, and I think they did one of those overreaches because if you look back at that draft class,
I was going to say they traded up for him.
Yeah, if you look, they had three first round picks in that draft. Did you realize that?
Yeah,
so it wasn't a great. If you look at it, there wasn't a great quarterback class to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I argued in the offseason, this past offseason, that they should have gotten out of the Daniel Jones conversation and got into the quarterback sweepstakes this year. Got to the point where, hell, let's be real, they could have drafted Michael Penix this year.
They could have, and it'd have been a completely different. You know what I mean? Like. Speaking of that, I have an idea for what they're going to do in the draft or what they should do in the draft. It's not what people think.
Okay, because Jeff got us ideas too about Dion and Cam Ward and all these good things. Please tell us.
I like Milroe. I like Jalen Milroe.
Really?
I do.
Really?
I like Milroe.
I can't really say I'm a fan just yet.
I like Milroe. I obviously we'll see what happens in the offseason, but I like Milroe.
He has a lot of rough edges to me, like Anthony Richardson had 2 years ago. Yeah,
somewhat. I think him with Neighbors will be well. I think they can make that work. But listen, we'll see what's going to happen. Before anything happens, they got to get back that locker room. You know what I mean? Like
that's problem one. Yeah, so you got to get that straight. Yeah,
you got to get the culture right in the building before you start to bring in any other rookies and before you even start to thinking about. Obviously, they want to go quarterback, unless
they have to.
They have to go quarterback, unless they make a trade for one, which I don't see happening. Right. But so obviously they're going to bring a quarterback in, and before you bring him in, you better make sure that you got the building right. You got your number one receiver. How are you going to keep him happy and keep him confident that he's going to be playing for a competent franchise going into his second year? You brought in Brian Burns and some other free agents in the offseason, and now they're questioning, what's going on there. You can hear it in the media. And then the New York media, like I said, the one thing that's saving them is that they're splitting between the Jets and the Giants. Neither one of them are doing well. So,
right.
They got to get things right before they bring in whoever they're going to bring in. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be Shador. It's hard if they get the number one pick. He's going to be hard to pass up. I'll say that. I
agree with because clearly to me he's the best quarterback in this draft. But yeah, I do believe that if they're going to end up if the draft started today, if we started the draft today, they would be in line to be able to get him because I believe the Panthers are above them. Somebody's above them that doesn't need a quarterback. I think the Patriots. I think the Patriots might be above them.
They don't need a quarterback though. They all right. They'll probably go Travis.
Exactly. So they'll take Travis, and then they'll be in line to take Shador. So it'd be hard to pass on them from that perspective. But yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done when it comes down to how to get this team back on track. Again, it's been laughable for the past several years. I mean, back to the early 2010s where Eli Manning was still in his prime. It hadn't looked good since, to be honest. And honestly, I'm glad Saquon kind of got out of there because really what all they're going to have done by keeping him was run him into the ground.
Yeah.
So it's probably best he did. It's best he did get out of there. But it's gonna be a lot of work that they're gonna have to do to get back on track. But I think that you're gonna start doing the locker room back by getting the right quarterback. You do that and possibly getting a GM out of the building because everybody can see. They don't want to say it, but they can see that he's the problem.
Yeah,
they can see he's the problem. So they just got to get over that. Once they get over that and get the right people in the building, they can kind of see the forest, past the trees. Then they'll be fine. They'll be fine because they got good pieces there. And I laugh at this. I'll end it with this point. We talk about them getting Brian Burns, have to spend the draft capital in the contract to get him. They could have had him for free. Because if you didn't draft Daniel Jones and you drafted Dexter Lawrence first, your next pick could have been Brian Burns.
Yeah.
He was in that draft in the first round. He was in that draft. Carolina took him in the middle first round. You could have had him. You could have had him on your own. You didn't have this, spend a second round pick and $160 some odd million to get him. So, it is what it is.
Like you said, that's when that ego comes in when they double down on their bad decisions just to say that they were right. You know what
exactly.
I mean?
And that's the biggest problem you have, and that's gonna get you fired.
Yeah.
Ego will get you fired if you're not right. I swear.
Absolutely.
I swear. Okay, but we'll see how things go. We'll keep monitoring the situation, but yeah, the Giants got a lot of uphill climbing to do.
Yeah, and good for Daniel Jones. You know, I think that it's best to get a fresh start.
Now, let me ask you this question. Now, do you think he goes somewhere else and does better
this season or in general?
In general,
better. You know what I can see happening? I can see Daniel Jones having a resurgence. You know, going to back somebody up. They end up going down, and he comes in and kind of like I don't want to say a Flacco-ish, because Flacco got pulled right after.
Right.
Right after that.
Yeah, what no Browns magic in that one. He look old. He look old now. Yeah.
Yeah. But I can see him having like a resurgence for a team, So I think it's still possible. He's still relatively young. He's like 25, 20, somewhere.
Yeah, he's young. He's still young. Yeah, he's only been in the league 5.5 years.
Yeah, I think it could happen. I think it could happen. So yeah,
I think he can be a spot backup dude, a spot starter. Somebody gets hurt. I'm not begging on him being a franchise quarterback at this point.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say. I don't think he'll be a franchise guy, but I think that he could be a solid backup, and he could be one of those guys that somebody goes down, he can take the team and have it be serviceable.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm with it. Okay, cool. Yeah, I do feel bad for Jets